Hello and welcome to the Brave Hearts Bold Minds podcast, Growing Fine Young Men. I'm Lee Hatcher. Thanks for joining me as we explore a whole world of ideas and inspiration as we seek to help the boys of today grow into the fine young men of tomorrow. Each week, I'll be interviewing an educator from the Scots College in Sydney to find out how to truly know our boys and how to offer all parents of school-age boys really practical ways forward to shape the character of a young man for his own good and for the good of the world. So let's ring the bell and meet our guest for this week's podcast. With me today is Brett Cranfield. Brett is a business and economics teacher at the Scots College. He's also a parent, and his topic is boys need high expectations and positive reinforcement. Brett, welcome.
Thanks, Lee. It's a pleasure to be here this morning.
And great to meet you. Brett, why is it and how much evidence is there that first boys need high expectations?
Well, Lee, my experience, it's not any empirical evidence that I've got, but, boys like a challenge, and they like to achieve as high as possible. And from, many years of teaching in the classroom and watching my own boys grow, I know if I can set a realistic challenge for them and just out of their reach, that they'll strive to achieve that.
Brett, I'm sure we'll all understand the need for everyone to have positive reinforcement, but that's especially the case for boys.
Yeah, look, I see boys as, having many insecurities as they're growing up, and I see my role as an educator to really increase their confidence. What I like to see come out at the end of this process is confident young men. So if I can make whatever achievements they've had, them feel good about that, that's my job done. So I need to find out what level they're at and ensure that they are, are confident that they've achieved something.
But why is that especially for boys, do you reckon?
Looking at my sons and the boys I teach, the early part, through year 7 up to about year 10, we're talking about young teenagers, they can be quite insecure. There's a lot of things they're trying to find themselves and who they are.
Sure.
So positive reinforcement, whether that's, from their peers, their parents or their teachers, they are craving that. They are looking for, am I on the right track? Am I going in the right direction? So I love when I give a boy, a pat on the back, or even, sometimes it's just a smile and he knows, oh, I'm heading in the right direction.
Your face does actually show much more than you might think, actually, doesn't it?
Well, I think, they say that communication, only 10% of it's verbal. So
spot on.
There's lots of body language and smiles and movements which let a boy know that, oh, Sir's happy with me, so I'm heading in the right direction.
Well, at least for today. Why do you think, Brett, respect is such a big thing for boys and for that matter men?
Look, for me, respect is the ultimate goal that we probably strive for. We want to be, not just liked, but appreciated for our strengths and accepting our weaknesses. So I think respect is what we can take with us. We can hang our hat on the fact that people respect us. So I think that's, it's the ultimate one for me.
But it is a big thing for boys and men, isn't it?
Well, they need it. They crave it. They're looking for respect. And, we do a lot. Well, in the past, we've done a lot about the thinking sportsman. And I definitely use those 3 levels of respect when I'm coaching a sporting team. Respect from the opposition and respect from your teammates, but mostly respect from yourself.
Yeah.
So
how critical is self-respect?
Well, I think, again, that's the ultimate one of all your respects. You've got to be able to look yourself in the mirror and know that you've given 100% or that you've achieved something that you can be proud of. Only you know when you've done a job which is not your best.
Yes.
So you need to be working towards doing your best as often as you possibly can, and then you'll have your self-respect, I would hope.
Respect from peers, the influence of peers can be a huge factor in a boy's life. What does that do for a boy? Especially, I suppose, as you've seen in sport, but also in the classroom. And I guess as a parent too.
Boys love games, don't they? And they like friendship and camaraderie. So in the team situation, in the classroom, they're all looking to help each other along. But, peer pressure's a terrible thing, when you're growing up. I remember, being under a little bit of peer pressure and doing some things that possibly I'm not proud of. So peer has a huge influence. And if you can, get the respect from your peers that you're developing into your own man and you've got your own strengths, I think peers will respect that. So.
But how do you harness that peer pressure to set the bar high for a boy, whether it's at school or at home?
Making challenges the boys can achieve, working together in teamwork. I mean, a lot of our class work is, dividing them up into teams and, we always say, are you going to achieve anything better as a team than you would as an individual?
Yeah,
Often it's not the case. So,
yes.
I say to the boys, you need to find each other's strengths and support each other in, getting the job done. Now, obviously, there's always a sporting term analogy, but, in the workplace as well, we want to find how to work with people, and that peer respect, is important.
I expect you kind of glow when you see that working, when you see that kind of happening.
I think the boys glow. The boys know,
sure.
When they've achieved something better than any individual could achieve. Now, that's not always the case, as I said. Together everyone should achieve more. That's your great acronym for team. But when they know that they've achieved something good and they're proud of it, then, that's when things are humming.
In terms of their expectations and conduct, do you think boys inherently know what's right or wrong, good or bad?
I would hope so. I've got great faith in our path to moral enlightenment. That's fairly serious. But, I would hope the boys know that. And, from my experience, I think they do. They don't need to be told, as we said before, a little bit of body language or a little bit of a roll of the eyes. Well, sometimes at a boy that maybe he's off track and he's maybe doing the wrong thing. I think deep down these boys know when their peers and staff members and parents can, guide these guys in the right direction. They know, and they just need a look.
And often they need to find out for themselves rather than being told by a third party.
Yeah, they need to experience that. Again, I think the peers who are all going through the same growth and development together, they let each other know.
Yeah. That's peers. What's the place of a role model in a boy's life with his expectations? How important is the role modelling, say, of parents in that? And what's that going to look like practically at home?
Look, that's really, really important. As a father to my young boys, or now finished school and in late education, I've tried to be a positive role model. I guess one thing I look at is being interested in what they're doing.
Yeah.
I try to say to my boys, interested people are interesting. So, if you can find out a little bit about what someone's doing, that will be interesting to them, and then you can pass that on. So being supportive, letting them know when they've done the right thing, helping them, offering advice. Boys aren't great at seeking advice. Like you said, they kind of like to learn by experience, trial and error.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
So, just saying, well, you didn't quite get that right. It's tough. It's tough, but I think being supportive and trying to keep a level temper is important, when the boys maybe go off path a little bit. Yeah.
In being interested in a boy or a son, do you have to find it interesting yourself?
Well, I do. It's easy with my sons. Obviously, I'm interested in what they're doing. And in the classroom, when you've got a group of 20, it's important. We can teach boys better when we know more about them. So I always try and find out what a boy's interests are. And here at Scots, there's so many interests that the boys can pursue, whether that be drama, sport, science, entrepreneurship. So, I try and find out what floats the boys' boats. And if I can ask them how they're going, that's going to make my job a whole lot easier, because if the boy thinks I'm interested in them, they're going to probably be interested in what I've got to say.
Yeah, and it'll shine.
Yeah, hopefully.
When it comes to positive reinforcement from our title, how far does that extend? Does a parent or teacher have to gush about how wonderful Johnny's attempt at art or his performance on the field or music is when it's not too hot? Do we all have to say, well done, when he hasn't?
I don't think boys are going to fall for that. The boys, I think the boys
smarter
know.
than we think.
They know when they've done a good job, and they know when they've been average.
Yeah.
So positive and reinforcement needs to be realistic. And as we said before, often it's a smile or a nod or a pat on the back. It's not always geez, great job. That's part of it. But positive and reinforcement in the classroom for me is a better mark than last time they got.
Yeah.
So. Sometimes I mark on a pastoral basis. So if a kid's got 15 last essay, I'll give him 16 this time, even though it maybe wasn't a mark better, but it's going to make him feel better about pushing forward.
What a good teacher.
Well, you need
I've
to
gone
do
through
that.
all my life not realising that teachers sometimes do that pastoral.
Well, you can do that in my subject of economics. There's a little bit subjective. Maybe it might be more difficult to do it in maths.
Yes.
But, I think a mark to keep the boy progressing and feel like he's making progress, that's part of positive reinforcement.
That's so good. In your business studies, you set SMART objectives as part of this thinking. So to the uninitiated, take us through what the acronym means, how you use it, and how you use it to set high expectations, Brett.
Well, SMART, let's work for the acronym. S, specific, so something small. Measurable is, put a number on it. A is for achievable, so it's not out of the boys' reach. It's realistic. I think that's just thrown in there to make the word smart. And time-framed is, over what period are you going to achieve this? So, like in business studies, we might say we want to increase profit. Well, that's not smart. So we want to increase profit by 10% over 18 months. That would be a smart goal for business. Now, for boys, I find if you're going to, try and increase your marks, I say, well, how much are you going to increase your marks by? Oh, well, sir, I'd be happy with an extra 5%. Well, when do you want that? In the next task or over the next, 6 months? Well, so we get them to try and work with a realistic, achievable time frame goals.
And they really respond to that.
Oh, absolutely, because it's manageable and they can see it and they know if they can achieve it. Like at the end of the 6 months, if their marks haven't gone up by 5%, well, maybe it wasn't achievable, maybe it wasn't realistic, or maybe they just didn't work hard enough to achieve that. So, that's where you need to have, some positive reinforcement. Let's go forward and readjust that goal.
Tell us the story of how you used it on the rugby field.
Well, I had a pretty average third 15. I think it was probably last century. That's how long I've been here. We didn't have much attack in us, but we decided to set the goal. There was 11 games that season to average less than 10 points scored against us a game, 110 points in the 11 games. And I think we were playing St Joseph's, who were very strong in the third 11, and we'd had something like 94 points scored against us that season heading into the last game. So the boys had tackled fantastically. But in the last game, we were getting beaten by St Joseph's, something along the lines of, as I said, I'm not a maths teacher, but I think they were beating us by, 12-4 or something like that. Near the end of the game,
you're sweating blood.
Their number 10 makes a break 15 metres out and is heading to score onto the post. And my whole team charged towards this guy and tackled him. Nearly the whole 15 jumped on him and pulled him up just short. And the hooter went. They were high-fiving themselves, and Joey's going, well, hold on a minute, we've won. What's the story? We've won. But, they'd achieved their goals. I think we had 108 points scored against them. So that was rewarding for those guys, to keep them not necessarily winning and being the best, but being as good as they could be and, having something that they could hang their hat on. So that was pleasing.
What a wonderful illustration. Yeah. What happens when the SMART objectives aren't or can't be met, Brett?
Well, look, we need to be realistic. We need to say, well, maybe our SMART objective wasn't, as I said before, realistic enough, and we need to adjust our focus, and maybe we need to go away and work out where exactly we're not achieving. That's where the teaching comes in, like the real specifics of how do I improve in this particular area. So, we need to probably adjust the goal down for the next period so they can have some success.
You've also seen this happen in the classroom.
Oh, definitely. I have seen that happen. Boys consistently come up to me and say, sir, how do I get 17 out of 20 in my essay? I keep getting 15s, and it's tough for a boy to kind of break through that barrier, and we need to look at, his terminology, how well he writes, etc. So, for example, a few years ago I set my Year 11 a group or team goal of everyone achieving 75% or above. And the department, not me, would shout the group pizzas, and that certainly had them studying a little bit harder.
Yes.
And there's always a couple of boys who 75% was maybe going to be a little bit of a bridge too far, but they worked hard and come handing the results back. Unfortunately, 2 boys didn't get 75%, and the class was, bitterly disappointed and a little bit dirty on those 2 boys.
So they didn't get their pizza?
They didn't get their pizza. So it saved a little bit of money for the department, spent it on other resources. But that was a learning experience for the class, and to try and move forward for those 2 boys that they needed to kind of pull their weight in that team goal, I guess.
Does delayed gratification in that case work powerfully, I suppose?
Yeah, look, I'm not sure if they got pizza eventually, I can't recall. But
I'm sure they worked hard for it. Can I end this conversation on a practical note? How can the parents of any boy at Scots or way beyond go about taking up your wisdom of both setting high expectations and also offering positive reinforcement? How can they do that in practice? What's it going to look like, sound like?
Look, I don't think there's any hard and fast rule for that. It's just playing what's in front of you and, trying to recognise when a boy needs some positive reinforcement. If he's tried his hardest and he hasn't won or he hasn't achieved his goal, you've still got to find some positives in that. So he doesn't throw in the towel, so he keeps wanting to move forward, for you and in his own goal seeking. So high expectations, are not just set by, parents. Certainly we want every parent wants to see their children achieve as best they can. So I think like a school like Scots, there's lots of role models beyond the parents, the boys and other successful parents. It really helps to get the boys looking up and forward rather than, looking for the lowest common denominator. So I think the environment sets the expectations sometimes, and parents just need to guide and support them towards what's possible. That's anything.
In lots of environments, way beyond Scots, really.
Absolutely. Yeah. They're supportive and saying, look, the world's your oyster. You can achieve what you want if you work hard and you're realistic. So, parents have a huge role to play in just, being realistic. We can't all be brain surgeons, not that we'd all want to be, but it's important that parents don't place too much pressure on their sons, because there's a certain amount of pressure which is productive, but if that pressure level gets too much, it can be non-productive. So parents need to recognise that. They should know their sons better than anyone, really.
And take the time to do it.
Take the time to get interested in, what's important in the boy's life at that stage. It's not always the ATAR. It's not always the highest possible result. As you'd remember, I barely remember what it was like to be a teenager. There's lots of other things going on. So, I think if parents get a real good grasp of where their son's at in his own life, they can set realistic expectations and guide him towards, his best achievements.
Brett Cranfield, there's great wisdom in this. Thanks so much indeed for sharing it with us. Thank you.
Thanks, mate. It's been a pleasure.
If you'd like more information about growing your boy into a fine young man, you can subscribe to receive really useful articles and news from the Scots College. It's free, offered to every parent who wants the very best for their boy in their journey to manhood. In your internet search engine, enter the Scots College e-newsletter to subscribe. I'm Lee Hatcher. Hope you'll join me again next week on the Brave Hearts, Bold Minds podcast, Growing Fine Young Men. Brett, your finger I see is hovering over that button. Hit it.
Here we go.